Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. Coming up, the urgent need to get more women into tech. We follow one French woman who's launched her very own startup. Also, we talk to Nicola Hazell, who's leading Australia's first venture-backed startup accelerator designed specifically to support female entrepreneurs. And the extreme risks associated with being a superstar in Afghanistan. Now, on this program, we've frequently talked about the dangers of women being left behind in the digital revolution. For instance, the vast majority of CEOs at the biggest tech companies are men, but some are refusing to be put off by this. That includes a 29-year-old French woman whose startup has just secured some €7 million in funding from investors. Martin Pollard has the story.
The idea for Bénédicte de Raffaï-Soisson's company came by chance. She was sifting through hundreds of CVs looking for inspiration when she realised businesses must face a similar problem. So she created Clustery. It's a HR tool that uses algorithms and big data to help companies recruit internally and map out career paths for their employees. Clustery is less than 3 years old, but already its client list features the likes of Carrefour, Orange Mobile and pharmaceutical group Sanofi.
We didn't choose or become really interested in Clustery because Bénédicte is a woman, rather because the company is presenting an innovative solution.
Bénédicte was recently named amongst Forbes' top 30 Europeans in the tech sector, and her business has just secured €7 million of investment.
I've always enjoyed setting up and running new projects. I've always liked being independent and free. And I discovered I could achieve my goals by being an entrepreneur.
Amongst her team of 25, women are in the minority. That reflects the tech sector as a whole.
I think this is a sector that would gain from having more female representation, because it calls for lots of creativity.
Around a third of French startups are run by women. Some say this is because statistically less women want to run a business, but others, like one of Bénédicte's friends, say prejudice may be at work.
People make comments about pregnancy. When am I going to take maternity leave? Am I going to be able to work? I don't even think about these things. We're in the 21st century.
Getting investment is seen as especially tough. In 2016, 13% of French startups who obtained financing were managed by women. That's a 2% drop on 2015.
Now, watching that with me in the studio is Nicola Hazell, who's the director of She Starts, as well as being the head of diversity and impact at Blue Chili Group in Sydney, Australia. She's a guest speaker at this year's OECD Forum in Paris and is joining us today. Nicola, thanks so much for being with us.
My pleasure.
First of all, tell us a little bit about She Starts.
So She Starts is a program aimed at turbocharging female leadership in the startup economy. In Australia and indeed all around the world, women are grossly underrepresented in the tech and startup space. And this is the environment where our economies are being built, where we're driving those innovation agendas for the future of work. So if we're going to actually build an inclusive economy and one that can thrive, we need to ensure that women are not missing in action as they are right now.
It seems like there's still a problem with sexism, which is really interesting, keeping in mind that most of the people working in the tech industry probably grew up with working mothers, unlike their older peers.
We've still got a long way to go on the road to gender equality, and we really need to see the fact that in the tech space there is a lot of work to be done. What we are seeing though is people who are starting to chip away at the edges, and there are some shifts in this environment, but it takes really intentional work in order to shift the dial when it comes to gender equality in this space. Indeed, we have seen an environment where at the moment, when you think about technology, you think about a space that is dominated by men, and to change that, we need to showcase more women in this environment and inject the funding, the support, the acceleration into getting them into that space.
Why is it still happening though?
I think across every industry, sexism still exists. It is a deeply embedded part of the world that we live in. It's still happening because we're still having a society that is not equal. Women make up 50% of our population, but they aren't represented equally across leadership.
Nicola, Uber, of course, being perhaps the best example of the worst kind of that behaviour. They've just hired Harvard Business School's Francis Frey as a top leadership and strategy executive to fix the problem. Is it a case of too little, too late?
I'm afraid there are plenty of horror stories, aren't there, where we see cases where women have been treated really poorly within companies in many industries, and indeed there is a real pinpointed highlight on this in tech, an environment where there are very few women with the technology skills in places like Silicon Valley. In the decades leading into now, we've seen the shifts to try and make that change, but it has been a slow-moving beast. And therefore, the issues around having a dominant culture where individuals, particularly men in these roles, are able to demand an environment whatever they want, you do see challenges that then occur because women are not feeling comfortable at all in that environment. To actually change this requires systemic change.
And how do you do that?
So it's not just the case of employing one person who's going to make a panacea, if you like, to solve everybody's problems. You actually have to affect change at every end of the pipeline. With She Starts, we're looking at a very pointed part about who are the people who are starting the Ubers of the future, the companies that are going to leverage technology to create highly scalable products, but also to make a huge impact in the world. And what we're seeing when we do that is with She Starts, we opened applications last year in Australia in October, and we had more than 800 women registered to apply. Double the number of any program run in Australia before like this. Now, the female leaders who are now bringing their companies through this program, the 10 female founders who are in She Starts, these are individuals who are deeply passionate about creating change in the world. They want to build companies that have a real impact. They want to build teams that are passionate and driven by purpose and that are connected to the work that they're doing. So it's a real shift in that focus for these companies, but they are at the same time building scalable commercial enterprises.
Should governments get involved?
The question isn't should they, it's how. It's how they make the right impact.
And how do they?
So the role of government here isn't just about putting money into an environment and then hoping that it all works out. We really do need to design for diversity. So if we look at funding packages, for example, that go into boosting the innovation economy, investing in incubator programs and accelerators, support for and mechanisms to drive greater venture capital investment, we can't just divide it into the things that we do to help women and everything else. In fact, we do need to have very intentional investment in the areas around female founders, but at the same time, for all investment, there needs to be diversity measures. So it's not just a case of, well, we funded some programs for women. It's not our fault that all the other programs didn't have any women in them. Let's make sure that we drive diversity across the board. Let's listen to the scientific evidence that is now unequivocal that tells us that diversity drives better innovation, better creativity, and better bottom lines, and recognise, therefore, that it should be a non-negotiable.
Nicola Hazell, I'm terribly sorry we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Now, finally, Ariana Saeed is a superstar in Afghanistan, but that alone comes with distinct risks. As a judge on the popular TV talent shows, the singer has been targeted by Islamist hardliners and has had a bounty on her head for not wearing a veil. Recently, she gave a concert in Paris where she wore a nude-coloured dress that provoked an outcry to the point where she burnt it in protest. Shirley Sitbon has more on the outspoken artist.
Until 2011, Ariana Saeed's life was almost entirely about pop music and fun. The woman who fled the war in Afghanistan with her family at the age of 9 knew that being a singer is controversial in her traditional culture. But living in London, she pressed on with her passion. Her view of things changed when she returned to her home country and saw extreme poverty and women being deprived of their basic rights.
Seeing what I saw in Afghanistan affected me in different ways. You know, like I started singing for women's rights, I started singing for peace, to bring awareness about the problems inside Afghanistan and everything. So it has definitely changed me and my music as well.
Performing in Afghanistan, Ariana Saeed became a coach and judge in a music reality show. She then became the victim of radical clerics' threats issued on television because they said women shouldn't dance or sing.
The mullah just said on a national TV that whoever brings this girl's head, they'll go to heaven. And I think about 1 month had left for me to finish the show and come back to London at that time. It was the most scariest and toughest time I've ever been through.
Threats have not stopped the singer. They've turned her into a hero for many on the streets of Kabul.
Ariana Saeed is a brave lady and a singer who shows how brave women are. She encourages us as a female singer to do what we want.
Before, the world was thinking that in Afghanistan the women, they are all in burqa. They cannot go to stage, they cannot sing. So what is she doing? For me, it represents something very new and something very different from what was before.
Connection with her fans is something the singer is very proud of. Their stories have a strong impact on her, like when a young woman said her father allowed her to study only after he listened to Ariana's song on women's rights.
And right now I'm getting shivers when I'm telling you this story. And this is the thing that gives me the energy and the positiveness to go back and carry on with what I'm doing.
An extraordinary woman. And that's it for now. And if you'd like to comment on what you've just seen, you can head to our Facebook page. That's France24.51%, or do send us a tweet at _51%. Thanks for your feedback so far. And please do keep those comments coming in. So until our next show, bye for now.